Hello, everybody, and welcome to MSP Mountain. My name is Eric, and I'm the host. And today I have Ernest Murry, who is an MSP consultant and an MSP co-owner himself, who basically has built a MSP that I really admire. So I thought it would be really great to have him on the podcast and sort of ask him how he did what he did and built such a great vibe and such a model with his clients that he's able to charge a premium price and sort of provide that premium level of service that people love. And so this is Ernest from Genuine Technology Group, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Eric, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate what you do for the MSP community. It's really important to us.
Yeah, and I appreciate you spreading the word about us at Supportive Venture, our company for outsourced staffing and all that stuff. And it's been a very good relationship. And so let's start with you as an MSP consultant. What do you sort of do in that area for people who are trying to, get started and sort of get to a level to enjoy some similar success to what you've built with Genuine?
Well, from the consulting side, I have a whole bunch of different types of MSPs that reach out. Either ones folks that are just getting started and
Hmm.
want to learn about how they can structure things and how they can be successful in what they're doing,
Yeah,
all the way up to larger companies that are just looking to take that next step.
yeah.
They want to move forward with their business and add additional automation and such.
Great. Yeah, looking on your website, ernest.pro, which we'll put in the description, your story is really interesting. So it reminds me a lot of my story and how I got started in the industry as a teenager. So let's go into that age. And I think a lot of us, I mean, we're around the same age. And basically, a lot of us started in the 90s when technology was just starting to enter the home in terms of personal
Mhm.
computers and Windows and all that stuff. So what was it that sort of got you into the industry or as a hobby in IT in the first place? How did that start?
Well, so one of the unique things is because of my mom's health condition, I was homeschooled all the way through, and
Hmm.
so I grew up basically at home, and I had limited access to friends and that sort of thing. Really, my only outlet was computers, and my dad was also very heavy into automation in his business, which was a heating and cooling HVAC business, and he was one of the first people in the industry to get into computers and put in automated dispatch systems and have radio systems to communicate with his techs and that sort of thing. So he pushed me really hard on the technology side because of his desires and his own company. And that just got me really interested in it. Starting as early as age 6, I was helping folks repair their computer networks.
Wow. Yeah, similar with me. Actually, my dad was, he ran an internet radio station in the late 90s and stuff like that. So, yeah, I know what it's like to, and like my dad taught me everything he knew about the computer and then said, okay, you're next, figure it out. I'm only going to go so far because I'm, older, but you seem to have a way of getting your elbows dirty in this stuff and sort
Mhm.
of like get into it. So how did you progress like through your teenage years into actually working in this industry and not just helping your dad?
Well, actually, ran off and did. I was a technical director at a large megachurch in Austin, Texas, for a number of years, and there's a lot of technology involved in the sound and lighting and video industries when you're dealing with that. So um, that got me a different side, if you will, of the technology stuff. And then I was thinking, maybe I'll stay away from computers. And I ran off again. My first real job, if you will, in the job market at 17 was as a 911 dispatcher. And that was a unique opportunity because I landed there and I was thinking I would go into a law enforcement career. But I landed there, and at the same time, they were changing and transitioning from an MS-DOS or terminal style dispatch software to a modern Windows-based application. And the software vendor who came in to deploy that completely had no clue what they were walking into.
Yeah.
Their software was not ready at all for an implementation this large. And it started causing lots of problems. And I ended up becoming just naturally this bridge between the police department and the software vendor, and regained a love for computers and technology and that sort of thing. Software company then hired me and moved me out to Southern California, even before I was 18, to start working with them. And that's where I learned a lot about enterprise networking and high availability and very deep knowledge on SQL Server, that sort of thing. And it just kind of, I carry all of that with me now into serving small businesses and medium-sized companies that we do.
Yeah, it was that weird time in the 90s where basically it's like, well, nobody knows what they're doing with this stuff. Hey, there's this teenager over here who looks like he might be able to figure it out. Let's give it a shot, you know. And
And well,
yeah,
and technology wasn't as important back then. Most
yeah,
people had some form of paper or physical way, and the computers were mainly just do some finance, maybe do some research, but they weren't a critical part of businesses the way they are today. So they were more willing to let a younger guy have a stab at it.
and they didn't have staff for it. Like when I went to high
Hmm.
school, suddenly the Board of Education put down 400 Windows NT4 machines, and I ended up on a work placement in my high school, setting that up with another kid because none of the they were teaching C++ at that time. So it was just like it was a crazy time, but it really gave I think our generation a head start on basically just like, okay, society needs us, and our own innate sort of intuitive approach to handling this technology really is giving us a leg up, because all these people have never seen this before, but we've been fooling around with this stuff for most of our childhood, and here we go, this is a business. So I mean, how did things progress when you got your job in California, and how was it being young over there doing this?
That it was very fascinating supporting 24/7 mission critical systems globally. That just brought a whole new level of, I don't know, a whole new level of knowledge and pressure on me at that age, which has just kind of gotten me into this point where it doesn't matter what's going wrong. I can now be calm through it and work through it. Because until you've had a police chief yelling at you and over the
Yeah.
phone threatening to get you in the news, um, there's once you go through that, pretty much everything else is just calm and even from there forward.
Yeah, and they sort of had to trust us, right? They sort of had to
Hmm.
trust that we knew stuff about this stuff that they didn't know, and well, while we were kids, they couldn't just shake their finger at us and we would magically be able to make it work. They had to listen and support us, and buy the gear that we were suggesting and all that stuff. So it's almost like I feel like in my late teens and early 20s, I had a similar amount of responsibility that I do now, and it really primed me, like seeing that people decades older than me were relying on me to run their business. It really sort of like gives you this sort of maturity to sort of go into the industry, and further down the line in these subsequent iterations, sort of like do things in a much more evolved way.
Hmm.
So let's get to the start of how you started where you're at now, in the MSP space, and starting your own MSP and all that sort of stuff. How did that play out?
Yeah, so we ended up moving up here to Oregon. My wife at the time was tired of the heat, and well, we moved from California back to Texas because of some of my mom's health problems, and then she got tired of the heat there, wanted to move to Oregon. So we came up here, and rather than getting back into computers, I thought, let me do something a little bit different, and started doing sales for in-home HVAC systems, and then for roofing. And I got a lot of really professional training on the sales side and sales methodologies and communication with people, which being an introvert was really challenging for me. So that was good. And then I started working for a couple of MSPs here in the Oregon area, and I hadn't heard of the term MSP up to that point. All the
Sure,
stuff
yeah.
I had been doing was just kind of a break fix, hourly, helping folks out where they needed it,
Same
sort
here,
of thing.
yeah.
Um, and then there was this whole transition. The first company I was working for was transitioning from break fix to MSP, and struggling with that challenge that every company does as they're coming out of this let me make money off of everything model to, oh, am I going to make money giving away all of this unlimited support or whatever.
And even convincing the clients to initially pay you monthly rather than, no, we
Right.
call you when it breaks, like and why should we pay a retainer, or what they thought of as a retainer, and how will that improve service? So did you
Hmm.
help that MSP sort of on the sales side as well?
Yes, yeah, on the sales side, branded some of their solutions, and yeah, they're still up and running and doing pretty well. Moved on from there and those opportunities, and then started my own MSP and struggled with it. Really struggled with it hard
Which
for a
year was
number of
this?
years. Oh, this would have been what, about 10 years ago at this point.
Mhm.
So yeah, somewhere around 2010.
And when
Um,
you were starting your own MSP, what was the challenge, the main challenge?
Getting clients.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew what I was offering was good, but getting clients. And then the other thing I really struggled with is saying yes to everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really big thing a lot of MSPs struggle with as well is you say yes to everything because you're desperate for money, and for one thing, especially as you get started. And for another thing, as an engineer starting a company, which most MSPs are started by a
Yeah.
technical engineer, um, they don't understand. They know what they can do, and they don't understand that in the future it will need to be duplicated by somebody else.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of little one-off solutions and lots of unique things that are put in place, and those are really fun to work with, but it's not something that can scale, and it really bogs you down as you start to grow.
Yeah, and yeah, the lack of standardization, and a lot of the time, MSPs think hiring another tech is the answer, but then they hire someone with overlapping weaknesses, and they
Yep.
don't put in structure because everybody's so used to being the brave, courageous firefighter who shows up and solves problems, and it's kind of contrary to the MSP model of,
Yep.
proactive maintenance and just kind of setting things up so that it runs continually. And yeah, so how did you transition into a more let's say onboarding them with more consultancy and standardizing stuff, not inheriting a bunch of junk technology that sort of will be hard to support?
By making lots and lots of mistakes, by doing it wrong for a long time, and knowing there has to be something better here. And so through various searches and whatnot, if we discovered the different models, and it was about that time that I had to shut down my business at that time due to you know due to a divorce and family changes and whatnot, and met Nate, who's my business partner. He's the one walking around back there. He and I started Genuine Technology Group, and he had run his own break fix shop for 10 years prior to us joining up. And so we had some clients from his side that we've had to struggle to bring over as well. But we started Genuine. We were very fortunate to be able to start with this kind of all-in-one methodology. We had to figure out our pricing. That's changed over time, but the methodology that we have has been consistent.
So how do you position yourself as a premium client charging a premium rate for premium service, a premium MSP charging a premium rate? How,
We don't consider ourselves an MSP
okay.
to begin with. We're coming alongside our clients as business partners, and so we focus really heavily on more of the consulting side of things, calling ourselves more of a business process consultant who also happens to do IT.
Yeah.
And by doing that, we come alongside. I mean, a great example. We've got a math book company that started with us about 6 months ago, and they had a very manual process at the beginning of when we brought them on board. Of order comes in and print it off and put it into this bin, and somebody takes it out and handles finance and goes back into another bin. And it was just this manual process of transitioning these orders around the office and getting them paid. And they had full-time people just doing data entry. And so we were able to assist them in automating their entire process and assist them in choosing the right solutions and streamlining that whole thing. And they didn't have the confidence to do that before we came alongside and started helping them with it. And as a result, they're able to process uh, well, a significant number of orders more, and they've actually let two of their staff go. So they've streamlined their operations significantly.
So it's framing the relationship in such a way that you're not just looking at the technology, the endpoints and all that stuff that MSPs always talk about, but also looking at the business itself, how they make money, the people involved in the business, and sort of how they're using the technology and how business processes are sort of going through the ecosystem of technology you deploy.
Exactly.
So yeah, framing the relationship. What would you say? Like if you want to be that a company like yours that takes that sort of vested interest in not only technology but operations and all of that stuff, and how do you go into a sales call? You said that you have experience with sales. How do you frame the relationship from the start when a new company you got a lead or something like
Well,
that?
the most important thing before we even get to that point is the mindset and methodology that we have as an organization. Um, we're not just going in as, when we're walking in the door to help these folks out, we're truly looking at it as a business partnership. And that means that we're not really looking at the technology side of things. Even when we walk in from a sales perspective, we know that we're going to replace their network. We know that we're going to, put all of our systems and processes in place. We know what those are. They're standardized across all of our clients, which allows us to support folks efficiently. Um, and so when we're walking in the door, that entire conversation is about the company. It's about the business. It's about who they are, where they've been, how did they get where they are now, and where are they going in the future, and what's holding them back. And then finding ways that we can partner alongside them to help overcome the challenges that they have utilizing technology. It's amazing how the very simple, small things that are so easy to us are mind blowing to a business owner because they just don't understand technology. It's not something they're interested in. Even just, oh, you can do auto sums in Excel. That can be mind blowing to some people, and it's just simple to us.
So you want clients that are going to, show you who they are in terms of their values and what how
Mhm.
they got where they are, and you're going to go in there and you're going to advise them basically on how to hit the next level with how their business functions and the tools that they're using to achieve that, right?
And it's not complicated. You don't need some fancy degree or some special education to do this. As a matter of fact, all of us as MSP owners and as techs do this already. Have you ever had a customer come to you and say, hey, how do I do this? Or, hey, I've been looking at these things and these online form building programs. I think it'd be cool to build a form. Which one do you recommend that we use?
Yeah.
And as a tech, we already do these things, but we just don't do them proactively. And that's the only thing that we're doing differently is we're going in and asking the questions before the client asks them of us.
And so how do you get all the stakeholders on board when you're, do you usually go straight to the executive level of a company, or are you sometimes talking to an office manager who has certain imperatives? How do you sort of get the team all on the same page in terms of your vision for how they can work with you?
Just by asking questions, lots and lots of questions. So yeah, usually it does come in as someone mid-level who's reaching out and trying to gather some basic information. And so by asking lots of questions of them, and they have lots of frustrations and they understand why this process is happening. So they're usually willing to share a lot of that. And then sharing very little about us as a company. We don't talk about us. We don't talk about our tech. We don't talk about any of that unless we absolutely have to. Um, and then at that point, going, let's just schedule a meeting and talk with the decision makers. We'll make it quick. We'll make it simple. We don't go through a lengthy sales process. I really strive for a one-shot close every chance that we can.
And how do you make a clear scope and sort of boundaries for the relationship of what's included in your offering? I mean, obviously,
Uh,
you want to replace their network. I mean, that's a big thing that needs to be understood, right?
mhm. And that's all just done through the sales process. That's just done through the presentation that we have. It takes about 20 minutes to run through, where we talk about how we're able to provide support efficiently because of the standardization that we have.
And you probably prioritize the excellence of their experience. And it's more about giving to them, giving value, and letting the profit follow, rather than trying to make as much money off of the contract as possible, right?
Yeah, so there's a when you're talking about pricing, it depends on what you're comparing it to. So if you're walking in the door and trying to compare your big number, 180 or $200 a user, to whatever they're currently paying, which is going to be pennies, maybe it's $20 a workstation, or maybe it's nothing and they just pay hourly for someone to come in. If you compare those two numbers, your number looks massive. It's huge. And it's a really hard struggle to overcome that. Um, so what you have to do is you have to compare it to something else. What else is going on in their business? What is the most expensive thing in running a business? You know what the most expensive thing in running a business is. It's the people. And so the more efficient and effective that you can make their staff and their people, the smaller your number looks versus the large number of their staffing. If you can make an improvement of 20, 30% in productivity within the first year, you've completely paid for and more than paid for whatever number you put on the table.
And how do you recalibrate after, several months? How do you keep in touch with your clients and their needs as they're shifting?
We ask to be a part of their leadership meetings as much as possible. So if they'll allow us to be a part of those leadership meetings and their staff meetings, it helps us understand what's going on within the organization and what changes are happening and what the challenges are as the different department heads bring their challenges to the table.
Great. And so from your side, how do you train your techs to, like, from a technical level, say you have a project tech or someone like that, how do you train them to give that excellence of understanding of the client's business if they're, coming from a technical background?
That's not really their job.
Okay.
That's our job as the managers of the accounts, to understand what the client's business is, and then we relay whatever is necessary to the engineer, for them to do the job, and then to do that according to the standards that we've set down. So, if it's we've got a big Teams file migration coming up here. So understanding why we're moving everything to Teams because that's our standard. And then also looking at it from the client's business perspective of,
Yeah.
they want to make sure these files are kept safe and secure, and these ones need to have specific access. And so just helping them understand, why they're doing what they're doing is really beneficial, because then they're able to say, okay, now I understand the reason behind what we're doing rather than it just being a checklist item, and they're able to provide better value to the project as it moves forward.
And how do you make the help desk through documentation and training the most able to respond to these sorts of needs of the client and the most able to understand and give the best service to the client consistently?
We train them by saying that we are here to serve the client, and the client is usually wrong.
Okay.
That's our methodology. And let me explain that. So when
Okay.
we say
Sounds controversial.
it does, doesn't it? The I'll give you a great example. We had a client a few months ago reach out and say, "Hey, can you create this shared mailbox for us?" And this is a client who has pretty high compliance requirements. And rather than just creating the shared mailbox, we went back and said, "Okay, before we do this, explain to us what you're trying to accomplish. What's the end goal that we're trying to reach here? Rather than just giving you a mailbox with a generic username and password that folks can log into, help us understand what's happening." Well, we want to hire some temps and have the temps come in and work on certain files and such with us. Okay, now we understand what the goal is. It's no longer just a task of create a generic user account, it's now a goal. And so we're able to look at that goal and say, all right, well, what we need to do is create a shared mailbox and create a shared location for these temps to work within, but each temp needs to come on board as a regular employee. It's just a short form. You fill it out on our client portal, and now we can properly track who's made file changes. We can provide them with support when they call in. There's all of these benefits to doing this way, and you stay within your compliance. There's no cost difference or change. It's just a difference in the way that we're accomplishing the goal versus what the client had in mind. And that's what I mean when I say we're here to serve the client and make them happy, but the client's usually wrong. And we need to define what the goal is that the client needs to accomplish and then help them understand the best way to accomplish that goal.
So yeah, that means that the techs need to have a very good escalation policy to you or whoever else is doing the consultation on that level, so that they can constantly understand that. How do you keep your organization sort of free from overload, free from too many tickets? What kind of utilization do you like to see the techs have so that they can always give that sort of consistent service, consistently great service?
That's a great metric that I would love to be able to start tracking. Right now, since we don't do hourly tracking, or hourly, we don't bill by the hour, so we don't track by the hour.
Yeah.
So it's more of a daily check-in meeting right now. How are you feeling? How would the day go? Were things extremely busy today? And also looking at how many tickets are being carried over to the following day.
Yeah.
That tells us when things are starting to spiral out of control, and it's time to beef up staffing. But really, it's more about training on thinking beyond the task, thinking beyond what's right in front of you. If this is something that's rote, that's normal, add me to this mailbox or come install this software or whatever. Those things are very straightforward, and the techs know it when something unusual comes along and something that falls outside of our standards. And that's another great reason to standardize. You need to standardize so that your techs know what to expect and your clients know what to expect.
Yeah, because a lot of time can be burned. If for MSPs that don't have like a well-defined stack that all their clients are using, a lot of time can be burned, like learning things, how to troubleshoot something that you've never heard of before. I know you also do standardize as well on the hardware level, right?
Hmm.
With your clients.
Yep.
So you're providing the full hardware, software, cloud services sort of ecosystem to your clients, basically.
With the exception of the workstations and servers.
Okay.
If the client really wants to go do their own workstations and servers, those things are just commodity at this point.
Yeah.
Um, we strongly recommend they do not go to Best Buy and pick up what's on the shelf,
Yeah.
and we explain the reasons why. And usually they only make that mistake once or
Yeah.
twice, and then they're like, whatever you have, that's what we want to standardize on. We just want it out of our hands. Um, Sometimes that can take a while, but we allow them to make those mistakes. Again, we're just here to guide them and through that process. We don't do that with everything, just hardware.
But you sort of say, okay, we can try this, but our way is probably going to work better. But let's try this, right? Like,
It's more of a here's what you want a laptop. Here's the laptop we recommend. This is
yeah,
what we keep in stock. This is the level of support you can expect from it, and what you can expect off of it. And then on if they are like, no, we've got to buy this on our own, or that's too expensive, or whatever. Okay, you can go buy it if you really want to, but here are the challenges I expect that you'll face. And then 3 or 4 months down the road, when they face those challenges, it's like, well, I didn't tell you so, but I told you so.
yeah, and yeah, where do you still get challenged by inconsistency? Like in terms of your organization stuff, that is it just when they bring their own devices and stuff like that, or like what's the challenge moving like when you're growing your business, when you're scaling, how did you make it so that it scales no matter what? Or have you reached a level where you don't want to grow bigger, or do you feel like you could like double 10x your MSP
Oh no,
now?
we're definitely at a point where we can grow and expand. The biggest challenge that we have, or that we're struggling through at the moment, is trying to go through and figure out what relies on Nate and myself as owners.
Yeah.
So what things are dependent on us, and trying to systematize or say no to those items so
Yeah.
that we're able to pass things on and become a duplicated, a copy paste, if you will, work ourselves out of a job. That's what we're trying to do at the moment.
Yeah. And okay, so what kind of promises do you make to the clients in terms of when they have a problem, what's going to happen? They're going to call up, and how do the tickets get in? How fast do they get service? What do you promise in SLA terms and all that sort of stuff?
It depends on the priority of the ticket. So
Yeah.
we've got 3 different priority levels. If it's a medium priority ticket, then our SLA is 3 hours. If it's a high priority ticket, then it's an hour, and if it's a critical priority ticket, it's 30 minutes.
Hmm.
And that's just an SLA to start working on the ticket. We don't provide any SLAs for resolution because that's not possible to determine, especially if you've got third parties or something involved.
How do you deal with those difficult situation with vendors? Like, for example, some service that they're providing on the cloud or something goes down, and it's
Mhm.
not really your fault, but you're supporting that, and you need to find a way to give the client that sort of care, despite the fact that what's not working is beyond your control. How do you deal with that situation?
Through communication.
Hmm.
Communication is the only way to handle those types of situations. You've just got to communicate in every scenario possible, to the end users, to the owners, and just make sure that they're aware that you're in the loop, that you're staying on top of it, and that you're doing what you can to drive it. Once the issue is passed, then we start looking for solutions that we can support to replace it. So if we're dealing with like a phone system, for example, we've got our own phone systems that we prefer to work with, because we really want to own things from end to end. I don't like depending on third-party vendors, as much as we can possibly avoid it.
Yeah, and how do you automate that sort of level of service of keeping in touch and the sort of like all that stuff on the PSA side of things? What kind of workflow rules do you have that sort of smooth things over and raise the balls that might be soon to be dropped or whatever? What sort of ecosystem do you have there?
So we're using Autotask, and then we've got Desk Director sitting on top of it, and we've got Datto RMM off to the side. So from a technical perspective, that's what we have in place. We utilize Top Left, which is an add-on for Autotask that puts tickets into a Kanban format, and utilizing the workflow rules and such that we have in Autotask, it'll turn those tickets red, or have a little red tag that shows up when they're starting to near their SLA, or when they're starting to reach a point where they need to get responded to. And so keeping that up just on a screen and having our techs keep that up on the screen really helps ensure that tickets are moving through and that clients are being communicated with in a reasonable manner.
And how did your experience as a 911 dispatcher lead you to this understanding of urgency and how to treat people when they're maybe in a situation they might not want to be in?
It's really important to understand is that we see people just like a lot of law enforcement does. We see people at their worst. We see people at a time when they're feeling vulnerable. We see people at a time where they're feeling frustrated. They're upset. A very large portion of our job is to sit there and be a counselor for them, to listen to what their challenges are. Saturday I had to go replace a computer for somebody, and he was really upset with us, left a very nasty review on Friday. And I went, installed the computer, and just sat there and listened to him. The vast majority of his complaints were about Ring Central, something that is completely outside of our control. But just sitting there listening to him and allowing him to vent allowed him to get through that process. And by the time we left, he was like, I am now your biggest fan. So really it comes down to this philosophy, if you will, of supporting the end users, communicating with them as much as you can. Um, and from the dispatch side, understanding that when you're working with a client, they are at their worst and they are struggling, and you need to provide them with some comfort, whatever that comfort is. Most of the time, just communicating with them, it helps solve it.
And how have you approached the 24-hour service sort of aspect of the business? Because I know you've got various clients that do operate 24 hours a day. And
Mhm.
how do you sort of be there for them on that basis? And how do you deal with the escalations on the executive and management level 24 hours a day? And how hands-on are you when things are happening, after hours? You just said you went on a Saturday and stuff like that, of course. But how do you monitor your desk 24 hours a day and make sure that you see everything you need to see when you need to see it?
So Nate and I operate on slightly offset schedules. I start at 6 in the morning and go to about 3 in the afternoon, and he starts at 8 and goes to 5. So it provides us a little bit expanded coverage there.
Mhm.
And then every week on Friday morning, we transition on call off. So when a critical priority ticket or something comes in, it using iAlert, it rings our phones or alerts us that there's a problem. From that side of things. For the rest of it, we rely really heavily on our training, our standardization, and 99% of our issues are handled by the staff that you've provided to us.
Yeah.
Um, Here locally, it's just Nate and I. So the rest of our team is entirely remote,
Yep.
and they provide that 24/7 support. So here locally, if we've got to run on site and do something, it's up to Nate and I to manage that.
And so when you're training new staff from support adventure or otherwise, how do you instill them with that sort of judgment, that sort of empathy, that sort of operational sort of contingency and all that sort of stuff? What does your training process look like?
Help desk habits. Help desk habits is a fantastic solution for going through and training people about that empathy and training folks from a technical perspective how to interact with clients, how to provide them with amazing support.
And what does your post ticket closure look like? After it's resolved, how do you review tickets, ask why was there a ticket, and sort of put in proactive steps to sort of either document that so the rest of the team can utilize the fix that the engineer who fixed it did, or that it should not happen again by changing something? How do you, I mean, do you put a lot of time? Do you look at every ticket, you
So
and
there's
Nate?
the tickets go into a status that we call complete needs review. And whoever's on call that week goes through and reviews those tickets. Now, as we grow and we add more team here locally and we start adding client managers, it will be the client manager's responsibility to go through and review those tickets. So that's how we operate at the moment. That's how we review everything that comes through and what's happening. Um, just to make sure that we're not missing something, that there's not a bigger picture here that we need to take care of. So we do review every ticket, and it's going to the client manager's responsibility to do that.
Definitely. And yeah, it's like a lot of MSPs don't put enough into the pre-ticket sort of consultation with the client, the onboarding, the
Hmm.
sort of documentation side of things, and they don't put enough into the post-ticket. They're all just, here's a ticket. Oh, great, it's resolved. And you
Right.
end up with the rinse and repeat. So was there a point where you were more like that and you sort of shifted towards this more sort of holistic view of the ticket life cycle, that why is there a ticket and how can we avoid this ticket happening again? Did you make some mistakes early on where you were more reactive than proactive?
It's more of a what our clients expect from us. So it's really more along the lines of and saving us money. I mean, we look at this from a very selfish perspective. Since we're providing unlimited 24/7 on-site and remote support, for clients across 5 states,
Yeah.
it's the kind of thing where we have to look at ways to cut costs, and the best way to cut costs is to prevent the tickets from coming in the first place. And the way you prevent the tickets from coming in is by looking at them and determining what was the cause and how do we prevent this from happening, so that we don't get these calls. Because the more calls that we get and the busier that we are, the less money that we're making, and also the more frustrated that the client is. So that was the whole reason behind the way that we set up our pricing and our structure, to standardize everything across the board.
And what kind of clients are you do you not think are a good match for Genuine?
The clients who are stuck where they are, clients who are not looking to move forward or not looking to grow. Those who are just perfectly happy right where they are, probably not a good fit for us.
Hmm.
We don't have a specific vertical that we work within. Our vertical, if you will, is that we function and look for clients who are either growing rapidly or undergoing major changes within the organization, because that allows us to come alongside and support them through that process.
Hmm.
If they're kind of stuck where they are, they're not going to do well.
Yeah. And so do you have just one level of service and everybody gets that premium level of service, or are there different tiers within your pricing?
We've got two, what we call essentials and premium. Are professional. I'm sorry, enhanced and professional. The enhanced package contains everything that the professional package does, with the exception of additional security. So a managed 24/7 SOC and SIEM, and some of the additional threat locker, some of the additional tools that are really important from a security perspective are, that are necessary, I should say, for those who are part of a compliance program.
Yeah.
And then we also offer a significantly higher level of business care and proactive business process consulting on that professional level. The enhanced package is really designed more for the smaller client who, you know, just needs the IT support side of things, and they're growing and they need that structure, but their processes are pretty well in place.
Great. And I mean, how do you manage your time, you and Nate, to run the help desk and sort of consult with all the clients? How do you sort of book that all in so that it makes sense in terms of so that your life is not, all this chaos happening? How do you like? What does your week look like? Is I guess what I'm asking, because you seem pretty relaxed and you seem like I.
It's a facade.
Yeah.
No, at this particular point in our growth, we're definitely struggling with that running from thing to thing. Um, so it's we have not found that balance yet. That is something that we're definitely struggling for.
Well, that's great. So I'm not going to take up too much more of your time. We're winding down now. This has been great. But what advice would you give to an MSP? Let's say it's what I usually come into. I usually get in touch with MSPs, or a lot of the time I get in touch with MSPs that are sort of like they want to be where you're at. They want
Mhm.
to be a premium service provider, but I feel that they haven't put in place the structure, the values, and the sort of proactive staffing, proactive maintenance, and proactive consultation that you have. So say a help desk has it's 3 people so far, and they're just tickets all the time. What advice would you give them to get to where you're at? They've got an MSP, they're making money. Their lives are, they're successful by the metrics
Mhm.
of most ordinary business metrics, but they want to go and scale their MSP, what would you say is the first thing to go and sort of set in order based on what you've told
Change your
us?
mindset.
Yeah.
You have to change your mindset. You have to change the way that you think about technology. You have to change the way that you think about the services you're providing to your client. You are, first of all, you're dealing with clients, not customers.
Hmm.
It's a really huge differentiation there, because a customer is transaction based. A customer is someone who comes in, buys something, and leaves, and may or may not come back to buy the same thing again. Grocery stores have customers. We as MSPs have clients. We as service providers have clients, and that means that they're looking to us as professionals to provide them with professional support, and we need to own that. It means that we need to own the network. It means that we need to own everything that's going on with that client, even their business processes, the software that they use. We need to understand it and understand how it impacts their business, and truly take ownership of it. We're not just coming in and doing what they tell us to do. If you're coming in and just doing what the client tells you to do, then you're going to end up in a very, very bad place, in an unsupported place, where they're like, well, we should use this firewall, and I want to buy these switches, and I want to use this software, and I want to do Google, and I want to, if you don't have a standardized stack where you're coming in and saying, this is what we have defined and know how to support, and we know that we can do this successfully and deploy this successfully for your organization, then your team becomes overwhelmed, because nobody is an expert at anything. You're just playing whack-a-mole trying to keep the tickets down. If you come in and you're like, we're moving all your files to Teams, we're putting in our network hardware that we can manage, we're putting in our access points, we're putting in our, as we call it, um, a user productivity bundle that has all of our security metrics and all of the things. So we look at it from a very selfish perspective. And that's what I suggest, is shift your mindset to a selfish perspective. What makes life better for us as their IT department? If I was an IT manager for this client, that was all that I did, what would I put in place as best ideal, best practice? And that's what you provide to the client. That's what you put into your bundle. That's what you're paying for. The client's going to be ecstatic. You may not feel that they are, they're going to be ecstatic, because they can truly take IT off of their mind. They
Yeah.
don't have to think about it anymore.
And so you must have competitors who are in your local area who are charging half as much as you are for an endpoint price. And if you don't mind sharing, what sort of how do you get clients to? I mean, how do you shoot that down in terms of like, well, these guys will do it for this much money. How do you sort of like? I mean, we covered this in general, but in terms of just the pure price thing, how do you basically present that so that they know that it's going to be worth it when they say yes to X number of dollars per month per endpoint?
So the first thing we do, as I mentioned, is walking in the door and having them talk.
Yeah,
The first 45 minutes of the hour that we're spending with the client is them talking. It's them telling us about their business. No one else has ever done that. No other IT provider has ever done that.
yeah,
And the second thing we do is we don't talk tech. We
yeah.
don't mention AV. We don't talk about backups. We don't just, if the client brings it up and asks the question, we'll be happy to mention it. We'll be happy to tell them as much detail as they want, but we're not going to bring it up, because that's not what they care about. What they care about is the peace of mind. And when you start shifting your focus to that on the sales front, you walk out the door and they're feeling like you understand them and you understand their business and you understand their needs, rather than just coming in and here's all of these features and benefits that you're gonna get by working with us. They really don't care about that. They care about the peace of mind, the intangibles.
Yeah, and the emotional connection that you can build in that
Yes.
sales call where you elicit the values, you understand their challenges as a business. This is what I do when I'm selling to companies, I call it the sort of like just like if you have this vibe in the call where you almost can like almost have like a crystal ball and know their pain points because you know
Mhm.
your side of the what you're offering so much, and when they bring it up it's like, oh, and then you kind of like say, so how does this tie into your philosophy as a business? And then they're not going to really like, when they get that proposal from you and they put it next to someone else and they remember the meeting, it's like, wow, this person actually cares about my business. This person actually wants to make things better about here. And they've managed to actually, I might have a blind spot about this aspect of my business. And this person seems to
Mhm.
understand what's needed to get, this part in order. And then the price is almost irrelevant if you've provided value on the emotional level and they associate that sort of connection and rapport and understanding with, you know, what you're doing. So that's essentially the secret to providing premium service, to not be transactional, to not be
Yes.
like so much about we're offering this and you're going to pay this, but just like, well, we're offering whatever we offer, and we're going to calibrate it to you and your business. And yeah, so but you must be saying no to some clients, right? What are the red flags when you're in a sales process that you would say that
It,
is a deal breaker for you personally?
anyone who's like, well, can we just call you when we need help? Or anyone who's like, can you just come in and get things working right for us again? Or folks who are just clearly not at all interested in trying to move their business forward. They're looking at it and coming at it with a transactional mindset of, we just want a third opinion, or we just want a quote. We don't really want to give you any information. So when a potential or soon to be client shuts down during the sales process and during that initial part, it's not worth the time.
Yeah, if they've got these preconceived notions of what you're going to be to them, and they're not interested in forming a closer, more symbiotic relationship with you. Yeah,
Yep.
that tends to be my experience too. And it's interesting that, okay, we're doing that to a lot of MSPs. And the reason I wanted to interview you so much was because you are one of the companies that we basically had to do none of our usual sort of like, okay, so how do tickets get assigned? How does this work? How does this work? Are you going to be asking the guys to answer 30 calls a day while putting down 20 tickets, like by closing 20 tickets and all that stuff? I just got the vibe, and it's like, well, I can work with Ernest because he is going to actually, I can tell that he cares, and he knows that if we provide him staff, he's going to be good to them because he knows that that's what's required to be good to his clients and all that stuff. It was just clear from the vibe. And so, I mean, it was great to build that connection and to, just really learn more about what you did to build this in the interview. So thanks a lot for your time today. I think this was full of really great tips for any MSP that wants to build a better culture and build a better operation and have better clients and all that stuff. So thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, Eric. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great. And once again, I got to say thank you so much for putting so many other MSPs in our direction as well. So thanks a lot, folks. This has been MSP Mountain. And yeah, Ernest will put some information about you and what you do, your MSP and all that stuff, and your consulting as well, if people want to get in touch with you, in the description. So
Awesome.
this was awesome. Take care.
Thanks, Eric.